On a bleak January afternoon in 1943, as icy New York winds carried forebodings of the end, a solitary man prepared to depart this world, carrying with him secrets that could shake the foundations of human understanding of existence. Nikola Tesla, the genius who had unlocked the mysteries of electricity and touched the edges of infinity with his inventions, was about to make a confession that would remain hidden for over 8 decades. A reel-to-reel tape recorder, concealed beneath a stack of manuscripts in his room at the Hotel New Yorker, captured his final words, not about circuits or frequencies, but about something far deeper and more unsettling. For 43 minutes, Tesla spoke in a low voice, almost a whisper, as if fearing that even the walls might betray his most intimate secrets. His voice, though frail with age, carried an unshakable conviction, as if he had finally found the courage to reveal truths he had guarded throughout a lifetime of extraordinary discoveries. The first words recorded on that tape, recently found amongst classified U.S. government documents, revealed a Tesla entirely different from the public scientist the world knew. He spoke of visions that had haunted him since his youth, when he still walked the hills of his native Serbia. They were flashes of light that didn't come from the sky, but from within his own consciousness, showing him realities that existed beyond the veil of common perception. These visions, which he initially attributed to his peculiar neurological condition, gradually revealed themselves as windows to dimensions that the science of his time dared not contemplate. Tesla described in disturbing detail how, at 17, during a severe illness that nearly claimed his life, he experienced his first true journey beyond the limits of his physical body. On that occasion, while doctors declared his critical condition and his family prepared for the worst, his consciousness completely detached from the matter that imprisoned it. He saw himself floating above his own body, observing with crystal clarity not only the scene of his deathbed, but also ethereal presences surrounding him with a pulsating golden light. These presences, which he would later recognize as the spirits of his ancestors, communicated with him through a language that transcended words. It was direct soul-to-soul communication, where thoughts, emotions, and knowledge were transmitted instantaneously through waves of pure energy. During that experience, which lasted what seemed like hours but corresponded to only a few minutes in physical time, Tesla received information about the fundamental nature of reality that shaped his later understanding of energy, frequency, and vibration. He recounted on the recording how those presences showed him that death was not an end, but a transformation. Consciousness, they explained, was like a radio station that simply changed frequencies. The physical body functioned as a temporary receiver, tuned to the frequency of material reality, but when that receiver was damaged or ceased to function, the transmission continued on other bands of the existence spectrum. This revelation would become the hidden foundation of all his future inventions related to wireless transmission and long-distance communication. For years afterward, Tesla kept these experiences in absolute secrecy, fearing that his scientific reputation would be destroyed if he revealed his forays into the realm of the supernatural. However, the visions and spiritual communications did not cease. On the contrary, they intensified as he delved deeper into his research on electricity and magnetism. He began to realize that his laboratories were not merely centers of scientific experimentation, but true temples where dimensions met and where the veils between worlds became thinner. The most profound experiences always occurred during the early mornings, when the silence of the city allowed his mind to tune into more subtle frequencies. Tesla described how, amidst his experiments with alternating current, he frequently received visits from entities who identified themselves as scientists and inventors who had departed this dimension decades or centuries before. These luminous beings who retained the appearance they had in life but radiated an indescribable inner light came to offer guidance and inspiration for his research. One of the most frequent visitors was a tall, elegant man who introduced himself as Michael Faraday. This spirit, whose eyes shone with a wisdom that transcended earthly knowledge, explained to Tesla that death was merely a graduation to higher levels of existence, where the laws of physics expanded to encompass realities that the embodied human mind could scarcely conceive. Faraday revealed that on the spiritual plane, thought and matter were the same substance, and that Earth's great inventors continued their research in ethereal laboratories, where the limitations of dense matter did not apply. The spiritual communications profoundly influenced Tesla's theories on free energy and wireless transmission. He understood that what he called ether was not simply a physical medium for propagating waves, but a universal ocean of consciousness where all minds were connected. His experiments with transmission towers and resonant coils were, in fact, attempts to establish technological communication between the physical and spiritual worlds. The recording also revealed details of a particular experience that profoundly marked Tesla's final years. In 1937, while working alone in his laboratory during an electrical storm, he managed to tune one of his devices to a frequency that opened a temporary portal between dimensions. Through this portal, he not only communicated with disincarnate scientists, but also had clear visions of what awaited each soul after the transition we call death. Tesla described this experience as a journey through concentric spheres of light, each vibrating at a specific frequency and inhabited by consciousnesses at different stages of spiritual evolution. The first sphere, closest to Earth, was where those who had recently departed temporarily remained, still clinging to earthly memories and emotions. It was a place of transition and purification, where souls learned to release themselves from the last vestiges of their physical identity. In the higher spheres, Tesla observed realms of indescribable beauty, where colors unknown to the earthly visible spectrum painted landscapes of impossible geometry. In these dimensions, the laws of time and space bent in ways that allowed past, present and future events to coexist simultaneously. The souls inhabiting these higher levels were beings of pure light, who had completely transcended the need for physical form and existed as patterns of conscious energy. What most impressed Tesla during this vision was discovering that many of humanity's greatest minds continued their research in these higher spheres, working on projects that would eventually influence the development of science on Earth through direct inspiration in the minds of incarnate scientists. He saw Leonardo da Vinci designing impossible machines powered by pure thought energy, Newton exploring mathematical dimensions that revealed the true structure of the cosmos, and Einstein developing theories that unified not only time and space, but also matter and consciousness. Tesla then understood that his own work on Earth was part of a much larger plan, orchestrated by a hierarchy of enlightened beings working to gradually raise humanity to higher levels of understanding. His inventions were not merely products of his own genius, but the result of a collaboration between his incarnate mind and the higher intelligences that inspired him through the dimensional veils. The recording continued with Tesla recounting how in the final years of his life, communications with the spiritual world became increasingly frequent and detailed. He began receiving messages from deceased relatives, particularly from his mother, Juka Tesla, who had passed away in 1892. These communications were not products of his imagination or his desire for consolation, but objective and verifiable. Experiences that brought information he could not have known through normal means. His mother's spirit revealed to him that, after death, souls underwent a life review process where every action, thought, and intention were examined, not with punitive judgment, but with love and understanding. The purpose of this review was not to determine punishments or rewards, but to help the soul understand the lessons it had learned during its earthly journey and identify areas that still needed development. Tesla was particularly moved to discover that in the spiritual world, all missed opportunities for love and compassion during physical life could be redeemed through acts of service to still incarnate souls. He understood that many of the inspirations he received in his laboratories came from spirits seeking to repair errors or omissions from their past lives, contributing to humanity's progress through their scientific discoveries. The deepest revelations of the recording concerned the nature of consciousness itself. Tesla explained that through his experiences, he had understood that consciousness was not a product of the brain, but a fundamental force of the universe, as basic as gravity or electromagnetism. The brain functioned merely as a receiver and transmitter, tuning into the universal consciousness at the specific frequencies necessary for physical experience. This understanding brought him a completely new perspective on death. It did not represent the extinction of consciousness, but simply a shift to higher frequencies. It was like turning off a radio tuned to an AM station and turning it on to an FM station. The transmission continued, just on a different band of the spectrum. Tesla also revealed that he had secretly developed in the last years of his life a device capable of detecting and measuring these spiritual frequencies. Using principles similar to those of his resonant coils, but calibrated for much more subtle waves, he managed to record spiritual presences and even record fragments of communications from beyond. These experiments, which he kept absolutely secret, scientifically confirmed much of what he had subjectively experienced during his visions. The device, which he called the ethereal receiver, was destroyed by himself shortly before his death, as he feared it would fall into the wrong hands. In the recording, Tesla expressed his regret at not having had enough time to perfect the technology and present it to the world in a way that could be accepted by the scientific community. He knew that the implications of his spiritual discoveries were far too advanced for his time. In the final minutes of the recording, Tesla's voice became even weaker, but also more urgent. He spoke of signs he had begun to receive, indicating that his own transition was near. These signs were not vague premonitions, but direct communications from loved ones who had already passed, preparing him for the journey ahead. He described visions of a tunnel of light that periodically opened in his room, through which he could glimpse familiar figures beckoning and calling him home. He felt no fear, but a growing anticipation, like a traveler who finally sights the destination of a long journey. Tesla understood that everything he had discovered about the electrical nature of the universe was merely a preparation for understanding the electrical nature of the soul itself. His last recorded words were a message for future humanity, for those who would one day find this recording and have the courage to consider its implications. Tesla asked that he not be remembered only as an inventor of machines, but as an explorer of the frontiers between science and spirit. He had dedicated his life to unraveling the mysteries of energy in all its forms, and his most important discoveries were not about electricity or magnetism, but about the immortal nature of human consciousness. The recording ended with a profound silence, broken only by the distant sound of the winter wind against the hotel windows. 3 days later, Tesla would be found dead in his room, a serene smile on his face, as if he had finally found the answers to all the questions he had asked during his extraordinary life. When this recording was finally discovered in 2026 among declassified government documents, it caused a quiet revolution in the understanding of the relationship between science and spirituality. Quantum physicists found echoes of their own discoveries about the nature of consciousness and reality in his words. Parapsychologists saw scientific confirmation for phenomena they had studied for decades, and millions of ordinary people found hope and meaning in the perspective that death was not an end, but a transformation to higher levels of existence. The most striking revelation was the discovery that many technologies developed in the 21st century, from quantum internet to sentient computers, followed principles he had described in his secret recording. It was as if his visions of the spiritual world had foreseen technological developments that only became possible decades after his death. His recording reminds us that humanity's greatest geniuses have always been those capable of seeing beyond the apparent limitations of physical reality. They understood that the universe is far vaster and more mysterious than our limited perception can capture, and that the boundary between the possible and the impossible is constantly being redefined by advancements in human consciousness. In the final contemplation of his words, he leaves us with a transformative vision of human existence. We are more than temporary bodies inhabiting a planet lost in the cosmos. We are sparks of immortal consciousness, eternally connected to the universal source of all energy and wisdom. Our time on Earth is just one chapter in a much larger story, an opportunity to learn, grow, and contribute to humanity's collective evolution. Death, far from being the end of our journey, is graduation to higher levels of experience and service. Those who depart before us are not lost in emptiness, but continue their journeys in dimensions of light and love, maintaining invisible but real connections with those who still remain in physical form. The love we share, the knowledge we acquire, and the compassion we develop during our earthly lives are the only true treasures we take with us in the final transition. He teaches us that science and spirituality are not opposing forces, but complementary aspects of a single universal truth. The deeper we explore the mysteries of matter and energy, the closer we come to understanding that consciousness is the foundation of all existence. And the more we expand our spiritual consciousness, the more clearly we see the mathematical patterns and universal laws that govern both the physical world and the invisible realms of the spirit. The final message that resonates through his words is one of infinite hope and unlimited possibility. We are not victims of a random and meaningless universe, but conscious participants in a cosmic symphony of evolution and discovery. Every life matters, every discovery contributes to the whole, and every soul that makes the transition from physical to spiritual form adds its unique light to humanity's collective treasure. When our own time comes, we can face it not with fear, but with the same scientific curiosity and spiritual openness that guided him in his explorations. For death is simply the next great adventure, the next phase of an eternal journey of discovery and growth. And as he discovered in his final visions, on the other side awaits not emptiness, but the infinite light of total understanding, where all questions find their answers and all mysteries reveal their truth.